Washington Governor Jay Inslee told a group of college students Tuesday he was seriously considering a run for president in 2020. He made the comment while talking about climate change and how it should be a priority for candidates in the next election. From Saint Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire, this is an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, Jordan. That's great. Hey guys, how you doing? Jay, what's your name? Yasser Jay, nice to meet you. How you doing? Jay, how you doing?
I'm Lainey.
Lainey, nice to meet you. Jay?
I'm Franklin, nice to meet you.
Playing football?
Yes, sir.
What position?
Wide receiver.
What's that?
Wide receiver.
Oh man, I'd like to throw to you. If I had a wide receiver like you, I could have been in the NFL for sure. Jay.
Hi, Emily.
Emily, good to see you.
How's it going? Mitchell.
Mitchell? Jay?
Haley.
Haley, how are you?
Cassandra.
Cassandra, nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Ailish.
Ailish, nice to meet you. How'd this table get together? Randomly? Oh, it looks like a pretty smart table. I don't know. How you doing? Jay?
Hi, David.
David, good to see you.
Philip.
Philip, how are you?
Jeremy.
Good to see you. Jay?
Chris.
Chris, how are you?
Brendan.
Good. Brendan, nice to meet you guys. Listen, we probably should get started. I shake a few hands a little later. You guys can hang for a while? We'll see. You got to listen to the speech, then you see if you hang. Okay, how are we doing?
Stand aside here.
All right.
Good morning. My name is Jordan Cook, and I am a Kevin B. Harrington Student Ambassador. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and students at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at Saint Anselm College, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us for this morning's event. The Institute's mission is to educate, engage, and empower citizens of all ages to actively participate in the civic and political life of their communities and strengthen democracy. The Institute is nonpartisan and does not endorse political issues or candidates. Before we begin this morning's program, I would like to just remind you to turn off any cell phones or other devices that make noise. Today's speaker, Jay Inslee, is a native of Seattle and is the governor of Washington. He assumed the office of governor on January 16th, 2013, and is currently serving his second term. Before becoming governor, Inslee served in the House of Representatives for Washington's 14th Legislative District. After 4 years, he was elected to serve his state in the United States House of Representatives for Washington's 4th District and then his 1st District. Governor Inslee graduated from the University of Washington in 1973, receiving an economics degree, and then graduated from Willamette University School of Law in 1976. He has dedicated a large portion of his public life to fighting climate change, both indirectly and directly, to make clean energy more accessible to Washingtonians. Creating innovative jobs in the sciences, education, and other fields has been a strong priority of his governorship as well. And he's worked to expand the aeronautics, public education, and automobile industries, among others. Following Governor Inslee's remarks, we have a brief question and answer period. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Governor Jay Inslee.
All right, thanks, buddy. Nicely done. You didn't set the bar too high. Yeah. Thanks a million. Good morning. I am just so delighted to be here. I look out at the brightest generation in American history that are at this college, and the fact that you're an Institute of Politics is very inspiring to me. And I am very confident that if you all were in the United States Senate, all of our federal employees would be getting paid right now. And I can't wait till you are in those positions to do that. We need you, and I appreciate you being here on a nice, beautiful morning. I think I've understood the New Hampshire system of defeating climate change, which is to basically freeze it out. It was 29 degrees below zero at Mount Washington yesterday. James Inhofe would be proud of you and your efforts. But we have an issue to talk about today, and I know there's many things that I hope I get to know you a little bit about and the issues you want to talk about. But today the issue is climate change. And I'd like to share with you in my comments before we have a dialogue 4 things. Number one, why I think this is of such an urgent matter and why it requires the next administration to intensely focus as the first and foremost priority. Why I believe it is a unifying principle that can unify Americans. Why I believe this is a matter of promise as much as a matter of peril that actually can help grow our economy and our communities. And why I'm optimistic, fundamentally, about our ability to defeat climate change. So let me just start with the matter of urgency. the matter of urgency is quite apparent. We saw the IPCC report here just a few weeks ago that basically concluded we've got about 10 or 12 years to act in this regard, or basically it will be too late to really stop catastrophic climate change. And when I talk about climate change, it's very personal to me, as I'm sure it's becoming personal to you. It's personal to me when I stood in the middle of Paradise, California a few weeks ago, town of about 27,000 people, and I drove for an hour and you could hardly find a house standing. It's personal to me where last summer in Seattle, Washington, I live in Little Island just west of Seattle, Washington. In Washington State, we had to close our swimming pools because the air was so unhealthy, kids could not go outside. You think about that, in a summer day, and we enjoy the sun when it shines in Seattle. It's a big deal when the sun shines in Seattle, but the kids could not go outside to swim. Our air quality in Washington State was the worst in the world, not Beijing, not New Delhi, but in Washington State, because of forest fires that were consuming our Cascade Mountain pine forests, and in British Columbia had caused this massive pall of smoke. There were ash on the hood of the car of people when they woke up in Seattle from these massive forest fires. That's personal to me when my grandkids can't go outside to play. It's personal to me when I meet people, as I did in Miami a few weeks ago, meeting the mayor of Miami Beach, where they've had to build up their roads 1.5 feet because of the encroaching waters, because of ocean rising and inundating that city. So when you go to Miami Beach now, when you go shopping, you walk down from the roads down to the stores. That's personal. And this is now becoming a personal issue in people's lives. What used to be a graph on a chart is now a reality in our lives. And because of that, we just have to recognize this central premise of climate change, and it's this. We are the first generation to feel the sting of climate change, and we are the last generation who can do something about it. And it is my belief that when you have one chance in life, you need to take it. And we have one chance to defeat climate change, and it's right now, and in the next several election cycles. And so you can't overstate the urgency of this matter. There are many things that we need to work on in our communities. The cost of college, the ability to have greater early child education, net neutrality, all of which we've made great progress on in my state. But this is an issue that doesn't allow us the luxury of any time to defer this issue any further. We have to act now. So this is an urgent matter of peril. Second point is, I believe this is a unifying issue, and it is a matter of equity as much as it is a matter of the environment. We know we have a community that has suffered racial disparity, suffered income inequality, and we know that we want to aspire to Martin Luther King's dream. My favorite quote of his is that he said that we are tied in a single garment of destiny. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. And I think that there is no more apt quotation than that one about the issue of climate change, because it is something we share universally across the planet. It is something that if we play our cards right, we can address issues of inequity and injustice when we defeat climate change. And here's the reason I say that. You know who are always the first victims of climate change? It's the poor. It's the marginalized. It's the people living next to the freeways and next to the toxic industrial sites. It's a woman I met on the banks of the Jasmine, a woman named Jasmine on the banks of the Duwamish, which is our industrial area in Seattle. She was a 14-year-old girl, met her a couple years ago, and she said that she didn't know there were some kids who didn't have asthma until she was 11. She thought every kid had asthma. That's how bad asthma is in our communities right now, and people who have to live and breathe that diesel smoke and breathe those carbon fumes. So this is an issue of health. It's an issue that unifies us. And when we defeat climate change, we increase justice and environmental justice in our society. This unites us all. So we know it's urgent. We know that it can unite us in our response. But there is a silver lining to climate change. And this is an important point, and one I want to just talk with you about a few minutes about. And that is, it is a matter of great peril, but it is also a matter of great promise. Here's the reason I say that. The United States of America is a very unique country. We are the most creative, innovative, entrepreneurial people in human history. And where we have shown, when we have had great economic growth, it has been in times of technological change. Because this is what we do in the United States. We invent, we create, we build. You know, in my city, we made the first commercially successful jet airliner. We've led in the development of software, now in bioscience. This is in our wheelhouse of what we do here in the United States. And because of that, this is, I believe, the greatest economic opportunity that our country has in the upcoming decades. Because we know we have to essentially decarbonize our economy. We know we have to stop being slaves to the oil and gas industry. We know we have to break this monopoly of the fossil fuel industry, which has right now kept us addicted to fossil fuels and slaves to whatever price hikes they impose upon us. We need to break that addiction, fight back against those powerful interests, and free this country to grow an economy based on clean energy. Now, here's why I believe this is possible. I got intensely interested in this over a decade ago, and I co-authored a book about 10 years ago. It was called Apollo's Fire, Igniting America's Clean Energy Economy. You may not have read it. I hope it will be required reading here someday at this institute. And the film rights are still available, so I know that you haven't read this book yet. But basically, what I wanted to create was a vision of economic growth around clean energy. And basically, what I and my co-author said at that time was that we ought to be able to build clean energy jobs by the millions in the United States, because we know by necessity that we will have to transition to cleaner energy. There is no question about this. Victory against climate change is not optional. It is necessary, because without victory there is no survival. So this is a battle we have to win. In this transition away from fossil fuels to new sources of energy and efficient use of energy, be it solar or wind or energy efficient housing and commercial facilities, this is a necessary transition. And we know there's going to be jobs created by the bucketful in that transition process. And we are the perfect people to do this, because we are the most innovative people in human history. And your generation is the most perfectly poised to do this, because you're the smartest generation in American history. And you're the most technologically adept. And you're going to be the most entrepreneurial. So I think this is teed up for enormous economic growth. Now, it turns out that what I opined about 10 years ago is thankfully coming to pass. There is so much good news on this front. The price of solar energy has come down 75% in the last 10 years. Think about that, almost 75% just in 10 years. The price of wind energy has come down about 25% in the last 10 years. What I talked about 10 years ago, which is the availability of electric cars and electric buses, just in 10 years has gone from a dream to a reality. Where today, my state has one of the top 3 states in the usage of electric cars. Zero polluting, wonderful, very, very low cost energy. I drive a little GM Bolt, great little car. And fast, man, those things are scooters, they go. We have in my state the greatest per capita usage of electric buses, a little town called Wenatchee, Washington, where we have clean electric buses. I just financed a bunch of electric buses for schools, answering the call of mothers and fathers who don't want their kids breathing diesel smoke in their school buses. So we're using electric buses. We are going to start building the first electric ferry boats in the United States and North America. And I ride a ferry to this island I live on, so this is something that I care about. So what we are seeing is a revolution in real time at a very, very fast pace. And as a result of this revolution and this vision statement, I'm seeing this big in my state. And I'm seeing this jobs being created not just in urban centers, but in rural small towns as well. And I'm kind of a small town guy. I spent 2 decades raising my 3 feral boys in the apple orchards and sagebrush of eastern Washington in a small town. So I kind of like small towns and rural agricultural communities. And what we're seeing in my state is job creation throughout my state, not just in the urban core, not just in Seattle. So in Moses Lake, a little town east of Washington, we have the largest manufacturer of carbon fiber that goes into electric cars in the Western Hemisphere. In Lind, a little town of 300 or 400, I just went to the ribbon cutting of our largest solar farm. In Grays Harbor, which was a town that had some real economic stresses, we are now making biofuels and reducing carbon dioxide as a result of taking feedstock from Iowa, shipping it to Grays Harbor and making it in biofuels. What this means is jobs. And what this means is an economic future where people can pay their mortgage and put their kids through college and afford health care. That's what this means. So clean energy is not just an issue of environmental quality. It is not just an issue of species, preventing species extinction. It is an issue of economic growth fundamentally. If we adopt the policies that we know work to grow these jobs. And here's where you come in. This is why I'm so excited that you got up this morning on a relatively cold morning to have this discussion. Because we need your leadership to adopt the policies that are necessary to accelerate this revolution. Now here's why policies are necessary. You might ask, you know, with this tremendous technological innovation that's going on, why do we need policies? Why do we need politics? Why doesn't just the market solve this problem? And the answer is pretty simple. How many people are studying economics here? You guys taking any economic classes? Okay, we got one. Well, I know in your first economics class, what they taught you about was about externalities. That's the concept where people impose costs on society, but they don't pay for it. Well, the biggest externality in world history is a fossil fuel industry that's using our atmosphere as a garbage dump. And they're putting their pollution into our one atmosphere. We only have one atmosphere. And they're using it as a garbage dump. And they're imposing costs on us. Cost of health care, paying for asthma for our kids. Cost for health care for seniors with COPD. Cost of droughts that cost us $640 million in a loss of agricultural production last year. Cost of the ski industry that might be disappearing. We're having those costs imposed on us, and we need to free ourselves from those costs. The new industries, the clean energy economies, they don't put pollution in the air. So there's this giant subsidy for the fossil fuel industry. And we got to right that wrong. And the way to right that wrong is through a suite of policies, some of which we've already embraced in Washington and some of which we're going to embrace. This year we plan on having a 100% clean grid to promise Washingtonians you're going to have 100% clean fuel when you turn on your light switch. A proposal that will have a clean fuel standard to require the oil and gas industry to give us cleaner fuels. A proposal to use building codes to have much more energy efficient buildings so we heat our buildings and not the atmosphere. A proposal to increase our incentive package so people can get more electric cars and access to public transportation. A transportation infrastructure package that will be heavily dedicated to low carbon fuels, including public transportation. So we have $70 billion right now of infrastructure under development in my state. 70% of that is for low carbon transportation systems. You know, they can't build a birdhouse in Washington, D.C. We're building $70 billion of transportation. So these are things that cumulatively can work to defeat climate change. And they work in tandem. And one of the things I've learned is that there's no silver bullet here, there's kind of silver buckshot. There's a lot of policies we got to put to work on here, and we know we can do it. So this issue is urgent, it is one that unites us, and it is one that is central to economic development. So I want to share with you now why I'm optimistic about this. And I think this is an important message, because if you're going to win a battle, you need to be optimistic about it, you need to be undaunted, and you need to show a little moxie and courage. And that's important in this moment, because we are up against the combined forces of the fossil fuel industry that has shackled our politics, shackled us to this addiction to fossil fuels, and paralyzed the federal government. Now, it's paralyzed in part because we have a climate denier in the White House, but it's been paralyzed for some time. And we need to free that system to allow us to give cleaner air and defeat climate change. But here's why I'm optimistic. The fundamental reason is that climate change at its heart is as much and more about the American character than it is about science. Science of parts per million in the atmosphere, science of pH. Our oceans are becoming more acidic, as you know, because of carbon dioxide. But it's fundamentally an issue of character. And we know something about the character of the American people. We fundamentally are optimists. We are fundamentally people who have a can-do spirit. In my youth, when Kennedy said we're going to the moon in 10 years and bring them back safely, people said that's just nuts to do that in 10 years. I mean, the mission to the moon, when he said that, wasn't even on the back of a napkin. Literally, there were people at NASA drawing these diagrams. How the heck would we ever do that? But he set forth a vision for the nation, and this nation rallied to that cause, and they embraced the full energies that we have to make this happen, and it came to pass. Same thing happened in World War II. This nation has qualities of teamwork and innovation and dedication and courage that are unparalleled in human history. We simply need a rallying call to ask Americans to come to that mission statement. And when we do, I believe people will rally to that cause, because it is one based on a can-do spirit, which is fundamentally who we are and what we do as a people. Now, the other thing we have going for us is your generation. I said you were the smartest generation, and that was not just simple pandering, it is true. Because what I'm seeing in our labs in Washington State, we've started a clean energy research institute at our colleges. And I'm seeing young people come in and make just gangbuster discoveries. We have continued discoveries in making lithium-ion batteries more effective, making photovoltaic cells more effective, learning new construction techniques. We're building zero usage homes now. I read yesterday about building a 23-unit apartment in Seattle. It doesn't use any energy, right? So you essentially don't waste any energy. And your generation is capable of doing those fantastic things because of your training. And I'm excited to see you here to inspire all of us to know that this battle is capable of being won. Now, the other reason I'm optimistic is that I have been around the block enough to know that progress is frequently frustrating, but Martin Luther King was right when he said the arc of the moral universe was long, but it does bend toward justice. And I have experienced that in my own state. I'll just run you really quickly through some of the things we've got done in the last several years against a lot of obstacles that for years frustrated us. We've adopted the best paid family leave in the United States. We've got one of the best increases in the minimum wage. We've adopted arguably the best voting rights laws to make sure that everybody gets to vote. There's been this ugly voter suppression that's gone on for years. We want people to vote. We've got one of the best gender pay equity bills in the United States. I'm proud to have been the first governor to put in law a net neutrality law so that we are free to get access to the internet, and we're not blocked by corporate interests. We've made huge investments in increasing financial assistance to college students. We're going to do another probably 18,000 scholarships this year. We've made big investments and will continue to do that in early child education. All of these things were blocked for years, but you reach a tipping point where all of a sudden you make progress. We've seen that, and I believe is going to happen in the legalization of marijuana movement. And I just pardoned a potential pardon for thousands of people with marijuana convictions because now it's legal in the state of Washington, and we're helping finance our schools and healthcare as a result of the revenue from that. We're allowed to marry who you want after years of trying across the United States. So the point is, there are tipping points in our political life, and when we reach them, if we go for the gusto, which we should do on climate change right now, we can change the world. And I believe we are at a moment like that right now. And some of the most important people in the country on this are right in this room. And your ability to become inspirational figures in your realm and your families and whatever you do in life is profound. So I just want to thank you for being here. And hopefully, I hope that you will find a way in your life to commit yourself to this mission statement. It is a cause. It is a cause that is the most important in the world right now, I believe. And it is the one that we have to prioritize in our nation's agenda. And the reason I believe that is this is hard, and we've got to maximize the use of our political capital, and we have to focus on this intensely, and we have to make this something that we embed throughout our federal government. In order to beat climate change, this cannot be just something on one agency's agenda. It has to permeate all we do. It means that in our transportation planning, we have to figure out a way to reduce carbon dioxide as one of the elements in our transportation planning. It means in our healthcare, we've got to look for ways to help people deal with the increasing health effects because of climate change. In our Department of Defense, which has identified climate change as a major national security risk because increasing desertification drives mass migration, which we're already experiencing, right? Into Europe, we've seen these mass migrations. Well, that's because of desertification that have driven starvation in the Horn of Africa. And our Pentagon has identified that as a major national security threat. We have to plan for this and adopt to this. So this has to be something that we embrace throughout our efforts, and I know we're capable of doing that. So I'm going to just close by telling you that I'm more optimistic than I was when I woke up this morning. I've seen you come out on a cold morning to talk about this issue, and I'm going to look forward to watching your career success embracing this. And I will tell you this, for all the things you do, and no matter how long you live, if you look back today and think this is how I started on my mission to defeat climate change, you're going to feel really good about yourself because there's really nothing better we can do for our society right now. So I want to thank you very much. Looking forward for your easy questions and general criticism. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Who's got a softball question here to start with? No, I have not climbed Mount Washington, but I look forward to going up there someday with you guys and skiing Tuckerman's Ravine. What's cooking? Who's got an easy question? Yes.
So first of all, thank you for being here. So I feel like the most common argument when it comes to green energy and changing things to increase the climate is paying for it and funding it. So would you suggest that that would come from federal grants or be included in like statewide budgets?
So I believe that this, the scale of this effort requires all of us at all levels of our society to be engaged in this. Obviously, the federal government needs to become engaged in this, but that should not and has not slowed us down in our states. So Andrew Cuomo and Governor Brown and myself started a group called the United States Climate Alliance. We are 16 states that are committed to defeating climate change and meeting the Paris agreements. And this is a big deal because we represent 40% of the United States economy. And if these 16 states were a separate nation, and I'm not suggesting that at the moment, But if this 16 states were a separate nation, we would be the third largest economy in the world. So you can say that the third largest economy in the world is already committed to moving forward on clean energy. And these other states are doing great things. Governor Brown was up in my state capital 3 days ago helping us move forward on our climate agenda. And California has done some gangbuster work. And it's really interesting, by the way. There's almost a one-to-one correlation. The states that have moved forward on clean energy are the ones with the best economy. And the reason for that is that clean energy jobs, and this is pretty impressive, I think, clean energy jobs in the United States are growing twice as fast as the whole rest of the U.S. economy. The number one fastest growing job is solar installer. The number two is wind turbine technician. So these states are moving forward. Cities are doing the same. And we're excited about not being shackled. And one of the central tenets, I was chair of the Democratic Governors Association, and we had a good outing. We flipped 7 states. We have 7 new Democratic governors this year. One of the things that we're proud of is that Donald Trump cannot stop us. He cannot stop me from embracing 100% clean electricity in my state. He cannot stop me from buying electric ferry boats to run with low CO2 emissions. And that's a great freedom to have. And that's why I encourage everyone at every level, from the city to the county to the state, to move forward. Now, on the federal level, obviously that is the place where we can move the needle the fastest in the most direct thing with the greatest economic results. And we need the federal government to embrace the ambitions that we have seen, some of the new ideas now proposed in Congress, that have an ambition that is appropriate to the scale of this endeavor. And it's an ambition directed not just to defeating climate change, but growing jobs by the millions and bringing greater income equality instead of income inequality, and giving working people more chances, more professions, more training. And the marriage of this environmental issue together with the economic justice issue, which we've seen a little bit in the House of Representatives, is really, really a productive thing. And I'm very excited about it. It portends success, and we need that. Yeah.
Actually, this is a similar question. You know, you pointed to a lot of good things happening with regards to the economy in Washington, and even here in New Hampshire, we have, you know, we're very fortunate. My own hometown, about 20 minutes south of here, Nashua, you know, we're able to afford these, you know, compressed natural gas fleets of dump trucks and buses and all that. But all of this is starting to point to, for me at least, you know, we almost don't need to be in, you know, part of the Paris Climate Agreement, because all of these things are happening without us being in it. Mm-hmm. So one of my big questions is, why is it framed as such a bad thing if all of these things are happening anyway without us being part of the agreement?
Well, actually, we still are part of the agreement. This is one of the misnomers. Actually, Donald Trump does not have authority to remove us from the Paris Agreement. That could only happen on the first day of the next presidency. So I think there's a good reason we won't leave the Paris Agreement when there's a new president in the White House. I'm hopeful that that is the case. I do think there's a benefit of these international agreements for several reasons. Number one, it gives confidence to the rest of the world. One of the important things we've embraced as governors, and I've gone to Bonn and Paris to assure the rest of the world there's still intelligent life in the United States, that we are moving forward in the states, in the cities. And so it's important to give them confidence to know that we are still acting. And so far we've succeeded. So far the rest of the world is still engaged in this effort. So number one is to give confidence to the rest of the world. Number two, it does give people in public office a foundation or a springboard to talk about why we are doing this, which is basically we have an international agreement in part as a reason to do that. And it does, goal setting is important, I think, in any endeavor to set a goal. And this is setting a goal. So it helps focus us in that regard. I think your point is well taken, though, that the importance of the Paris Agreement is more as a goal-setting organization and a way to get the whole world to get on the same page than, say, a legally enforcing doctrine. That's where its real power is, and I agree with you in that regard. I want to tell you something, too, and I've said some good things happening to my state, in my state. We've had great clean energy job creation. We've got a great renewable portfolio standard. I've started a clean energy research institute at the universities. I told you about buying all the electric cars and buses. My state is walking the talk. We're buying electric cars. We've got the most electric cars per capita of any state in the country. So we're doing a lot of great things, and I've told you about the 5 bills that I want to get done this year. But that won't be enough in my state either. We are going to have to take some additional steps above and beyond even what my state has done. So I think there's a value in setting a high bar and having a good goal, and I think that it does do that. And good for what you're doing in your city. I hope you be mayor, and I hope you'll lead this effort.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Hey, listen, don't wipe that off your agenda of being in public office. We want young people. We need you. And don't think about, not running for office. You will love it doing it, and we need you. And we need you at every level. In this issue of climate change, you are as important as a city council person who can develop some usage of public transportation in your city as a president of the United States. So I hope you give some thought to that. Just don't run against me. Please. Yes.
Aside from your constituents and maybe us in this room, who do you draw inspiration from in regards to this climate change fight? And who do you think can kind of stand next to you and champion this to the next level that it needs to go?
I appreciate that. I had to think about this for a moment. I think the most inspirational people to me are my 3 grandchildren. And when I see them, I see their lives unfolding for the decades to come. And I recognize that if I do my job, they're going to have a great life. They're going to enjoy what I did: salmon in the rivers, snow in the mountains, forests to walk in, and clean air to breathe. And I want that future for my grandchildren. And my grandchildren have a very early appreciation of that, and actually a recognition of some of these issues. I have a 10-year-old grandson. We were walking the other day, and he said, Bobo, that's my name, Bobo, because that was the name of a gorilla at the zoo when I grew up. So this is Bobo. He says, we are all nature. And I just think, from the mouths of babes comes wisdom. And he even recognizes this and has begun to talk about this issue. The other inspirational people are my mother and father, who are not with me now, but in spirit. And they infused me in this appreciation of the natural world. They spent time revegetating the alpine meadows on the slopes of Mount Rainier. They taught young people the arts of the environment. My dad was a biology teacher, so we kind of believe in science in our household, unlike the current occupant of the White House. And we embrace scientific decision making. And I appreciated that, learning that from my dad. So who's most inspirational for you?
Well, I would also say my dad.
Yeah. Well, thank him. He did a good job. Make him proud.
I will.
Yes.
Governor, thank you for being here. First off, I know it's very cold and you came a long distance from Washington State. My question relates to the fossil fuel industry and how we're going to wean ourselves off of oil, especially since we're now the largest oil producer in the world. I'm just wondering how, are you proposing a zero carbon emissions like some people in the Democratic Party?
So there's a lot of things we have to do. We have to elect people who will stand up against that powerful interest. I've said I'm not going to accept campaign contributions from that industry. That's just a small thing, token of commitment. Well, there's many things embedded in your question. Yes. Basically, what this means is we have to develop the technologies and the industries and the jobs that can replace what we do with oil and gas with other systems that are decarbonized. It's really not, in a sense, not rocket science. So we cannot be driving internal combustion engines 100 years from now in mass quantities and not despoil the planet and make it really, in some sense, a place we don't recognize. That's just a scientific certainty. So we have to replace those technologies using our intellectual power, using our great mechanical skills, using the political policies that we know can work, and we simply have to replace those systems. Now the good news, we know we can do it because we're doing it today, right? We are replacing I drive a car with 80% reduced fuel costs than somebody driving a car with an internal combustion engine. And it's safe, and it's quiet, and it's fun to drive. That technology exists today. We simply have to find a way to capitalize and provide the capital for people to be able to accelerate the acquisition of that technology, because it's happening very, very rapidly. And you know, and people say, oh, this is just a pipe dream, never going to happen. Well, you know, what, 25, 30 years ago, how many people had a cell phone? You know, 25, 30 years ago, I said, we're all going to do our lives on a little thing we carry in our pockets. People said, you're crazy. That could never happen. Look how rapidly it happened just in a couple decades. Similar transformative things, I believe, will happen and have to happen in this source. Now, as far as what drives that, I do believe policies that have some restriction through a regulatory system on pollution make sense. So I was the first governor in the nation to issue an executive order that put a cap on the amount of carbon dioxide that can come from polluting sites. So I put in place a rule that put an absolute limit on the amount of pollution that industrial polluters could put out. And it had to decrease over time. That's subject to some litigation. Our Supreme Court's going to give us a ruling on that. I am reasonably optimistic we will prevail on that. That type of thing is a powerful tool and an appropriate one. And I'll say why it's appropriate. The other thing I've seen in my life is how successful we have been. There has never been an environmental regulation that we have adopted since the Kyogo River was on fire when I was your age, right? The river was literally on fire. That helped birth the environmental movement. Since that time, we have never actually adopted an environmental regulation that we've rolled back because we couldn't develop the technologies to succeed. When I was your age, when I was standing on the University of Washington campus, you could not see Mount Rainier, which I hope you all come and visit, on a warm August day because of the smog. As a result, we adopted a regulation that required the auto industry to develop catalytic converters and do some other decent things. Now you can see Mount Rainier. The auto industry said it was impossible to do it, but they did it because we're very innovative people. Now the problem is the glaciers are melting on Mount Rainier right now because of climate change. So you can see it, but we're losing our glaciers. So that's another problem we got to solve. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Would you be in support of a carbon tax? And if so, how would you combat the regressive nature of it so that it's not at odds with the economic justice issue that you mentioned?
So I have supported a carbon charge, to put a charge on carbon pollution in the past. I embraced a cap and trade system, which put a price on carbon when I was in Congress. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives, did not get a vote in the Senate. Recently, we had an initiative that would have had a carbon fee, did not pass the ballot box. The oil and gas industry spent $32 million against it. So I would not rule those things out for possible consideration. But I believe in the context of the moment, we don't have time to have the debate you might have to have for a carbon tax at the moment. We need to move. So I have proposed a suite of 5 bills that use different tools in the toolbox that are equally effective in reducing carbon pollution. So the suite of tools that I have proposed this year in the legislature will get us roughly the same carbon pollution reduction as the carbon tax would have that was on our ballot this year. And that's important. So I think the thing about climate change we need to realize is there are multiple tools in the toolbox. We've got to consider all of them, and we've got to consider the ones that can be most effective the quickest because of the time constraints we're under. And those are the ones that I'm proposing right now in my state. And I believe we're going to grow jobs associated with that because we've done that already, and I'm very optimistic about that. Thank you. Yeah.
What type of regulations would you put on companies, especially ones that make lithium-ion batteries? Because we cannot just change one problem like climate change with another one like burning the surface of the earth when they're digging for the lithium.
Well, really important point, because when we consider these multiple technologies, we have to consider the life cycle associated with the whole product, including the mining activities, the recycling issues when your battery is no longer of use, if that happens. So you ask a really important question. There's no black and white answer except to say you want to look for reasonable things that make sense, both environmentally and in an industrial standpoint from the available technology. So I have been a real champion for clean water rules that prevent the mining industry from despoiling our waters, and I have fought a number of battles in that regard. I think in the battery issue, we've got to think about how you have a recycling system to the extent that that's humanly possible. And when you evaluate technologies, you evaluate it through that whole life cycle. I think that's the most important tenet that I can think of. By the way, the battery technology is moving very rapidly. A company I talked to the other day, thinking about moving to our state, has a capacity of potentially increasing lithium-ion density, energy density, by maybe 20%. These are quantum leaps, and that's one of the reasons I'm optimistic. Yes?
Hello, Governor Jay. Thanks again for being here. I was wondering what you think the food industry has played involving the climate change issue and what you'd recommend that we do involving the food industry.
Well, one of the questions about the food industry, and one of the things that I'll start with about the food industry is that we are very hopeful that the agriculture industry will become a really vigorous voice to protect their industry. Because the industry that perhaps is being damaged the fastest in the United States is the agricultural industry. We had a drought last year. It cost us $640 million to our ag industry. We have a very robust export-oriented ag industry in my state. But we lost $640 million to our farmers and orchardists this year, or 2 years ago, because of the drought. When I was in Iowa a few weeks ago, the farmers could not get out in their fields to harvest their crops because it was too muddy. Because one of the things that's strange about climate change is it causes all kinds of extreme events. They're now having a lot more extreme precipitation events in Iowa. And as a result, literally, I talked to one farmer who says, look, if I don't get out tomorrow, if it rains tonight, I'm done. So we are hopeful that the ag leaders will become more vocal to insist that the government protect the farming industry. That's number one. Number two, we need to recognize the potential value of the ag industry of their asset, which is their topsoil, as a place to sequester carbon dioxide. One of the things that is encouraging is that farmers have had a stream of revenue by renting their acres out for wind turbines, and that's been a real moneymaker for them. But other potential moneymakers are streams of revenue because you can sequester tons of carbon dioxide by having the right tillage system on your farm. You can do the same thing in your timber lot. So you can grow trees, and of course they suck carbon dioxide and embed it in the tree, so you get it out of the atmosphere. Richard Branson, one time I gave a speech and he was sitting right next to me, and I said, Mr. Branson, I said, I saw you offered a $10 million prize to anybody who could develop a technology to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere and sequester it. And I pulled out this sketch of a cedar tree that I'd just done and gave it to him. And I said, I'll take my 10 million bucks. I just invented this technology. So there's a stream of revenue. By the way, he wrote the check but did not sign it. So that happens sometimes. So this can create a stream of revenue for forest owners, farmers, that we can embed in these processes, and we hope that's going to happen.
I think we have time for one more question, and then the Governor has graciously accepted our request to have a student photo taken afterwards. So one more question.
Who's got an easy question? Yes.
You've talked a lot about running for office. You talked about going to Iowa. Are you going to take your fight against climate change to the 2020 presidential election?
Yes, I will, but the question is, in what capacity? I am seriously considering being a candidate. I've not made that decision yet. But if I am not, I'm going to join you in insisting that my party put up a candidate who will make this a primary, paramount commitment to the American people. And nothing less is up to the task. This cannot be one of many issues. It has to be a foremost issue in order to succeed. And so if I'm as a private citizen making a selection of our candidate. I'm going to do everything we can to make sure we have that kind of candidate do this kind of job. And I hope you'll join me in that effort. So thanks for your question. I'll come looking for you if I become a candidate. Thanks a lot. Good luck. We'll see you at the victory party.
Students of Saint Anselm College and New Hampshire Institute of Politics, I'd like to thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Please let me say hello. What's that? Love to say hello to you folks. Jay, thanks for your guys' smart questions, man. And you didn't ask any ones that were impossible to answer, too. So you guys were easy on me.
Thank you.
Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here, guys. Thanks for getting up. You guys got a great institute here. How'd you get interested in this? Really? Yeah, great. Jay, nice to meet you.
Thanks.
What's your name?
Spencer.
Spencer, good to see you. Jay?
Sean.
Sean, I'll look forward to your advice on those policies. I'll look forward to your book.
Thank you.
Jay?
Josh.
Josh, good to see you. Nice to see you again.
Thank you again for coming.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Jay, how are you?
Hi, really nice to meet you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for wearing Patagonia. That's our favorite out in Washington State.
Really?
Yeah, it is actually. My son is, he's a climber and outdoor guy. And he works for a group called Outdoors for All. They take people with disabilities and take them with outdoor recreation.
Oh, that's awesome.
And my other son works building trails for King County, bike trails, hiking trails. So
Oh my God, that's awesome.
we do a lot of work outside.
Nice.
Jay.
Hi, Perrin.
Very nice to see you. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. Jay.
Connor.
Connor, how you doing?
Pretty good, how are
How'd you get that great name? Yeah? My second son's a Connor, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it worked out well.
Awesome.
Ask him if you were named after the book Trinity. Did they ever tell you that story?
No, I haven't.
So I got the name out of the book Trinity,
Okay.
which is a book about Ireland. Check it out. Ask them if that's where they got it.
Actually might be part of it.
Seriously?
Yeah, it might be.
Well, there's a lot of Connors kind of your age.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that book. Jay.
Madison. Nice
What was
to
it?
meet you. Madison.
Madison, nice meeting you.
You as well.
What are you studying?
Early education.
Great. You know, we're going to have a job for you in Washington.
Perfect.
I hope you'll come out. We're expanding our early education by about 4,000 students this year.
Nice.
And we just are so, this is just really exciting for me because it's breaking the cycle of poverty, as you know. That's cool. Well, come on out.
Yeah, of course.
Jay, how you doing? Adam?
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me. Jay?
Maddie, nice to meet
Maddie,
you.
how are you?
Good,
Thanks
how are
for
you?
being here.
Thank you.
Jay, how you doing?
Brian.
Did you guys get your questions answered?
I think so, yeah.
Really? Good. Yeah. Well, you guys hit the highlights, I think. So, in answer to your question, this is something we're going to further discussion at some point, maybe. But right now, we got to move on the things we can get done right now. And one of the things I forgot to mention in the answer to your question is that, for instance, you look at the initiative that we had on our ballot. 90% of the reduction of carbon pollution came from the investment, not the price signal. So economists will say the price signal can help, which is true, but the investment is where you really get your reduction of carbon pollution, if you can find a way just to finance it, which you can do a lot of different ways. You know, repeal the the Trump tax cuts. So there's a lot of ways to finance the investment, and the investment is where you really get the pollution reduction.
Yeah.
So keep it up.
Thanks for
Jay,
explaining
thanks for
that.
the question. Yeah.
Liam.
Liam?
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Jay?
Sam.
Sam, good to see you.
Nice to meet you.
How come you got to wear a tie today? You draw the short straw or something?
Well, we were hoping to get a 60-second interview with you.
Oh, great.
Afterward.
Oh, great. With
the NIOP Institute.
Oh, great.
Run on our Instagram page.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for doing that. I look forward to that. Jay.
Hi, Charlotte.
Charlotte, nice to meet you. Jay.
Matt, nice to meet you.
Good to see you. Thanks for your guys' hospitality. Really appreciate it. Look forward to your careers. And Washington's a great place to get a good job, too, by the way, just so you know. True story. Okay. Are we doing an interview, Sam? Yeah, this fellow wanted to do an interview, too.
Real quick, let me get Austin's mic out here. Let's do a quick photo, and then we're going to have a sit down here on the side. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Want to go a quick photo here?
Yeah.
Last person this way.
Don't pay attention.
Okay, can I stand with you? Okay, thank you.
All right, guys. Ellis will give you the cues to squeeze in here.
Now, is this the group of folks who are here this morning? Is it like one class, or is it self-selected, or who actually?
There's a mixture. There's a couple of extra credit opportunities with this. I'm with the student ambassador program, and a couple other people are too. But yeah, it's mostly classes and ambassadors.
And Governor, we're
Wait a second. Everyone that's in there, we got to switch in just a little more, maybe 3 rows, and make things way
Can
easier.
you pop a few more in?
Yeah, you can pop a few more in the front, switch it to the short.
I think that'll be it. If we get sound, everybody come on in. Here, hang on a second.
Yeah. So, back just a little bit more.
Good. And one person, another student, couple more students here. You guys? Behind you, Ellis. Next to the other Marines.
Please join me.
Couple more. Maybe one here. One here.
Beautiful. I'm just going to step back. And 3, 2, 1. Just going to make sure. One more. And 3, 2, 1. Take it.
All right.
And 2, 1. Awesome, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you for the softball questions. Oh, we got one more? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Some of you guys, are you guys coming in here? You gonna take a photo? No? Yes? No? No? No more? Okay, I guess they're not. Okay.
Now, is anybody from Washington? Here? Anybody from Washington State? Well, I hope you, when you're looking for that first job, remember this, Washington State's a great place to look for that first job. Yeah, especially working for the governor. We're looking for a lot of talent. We have an amazing, I mentioned to you guys the number of people moving here from around the country. Because, you know, the economy is just so hot. So if you're looking for a place, come on out. You can always move back. Thank your parents if any of them are helping with your tuition too. Will you just say thanks for me? You can't say. Well, we're working. We are expanding our financial aid program dramatically this year.
Really?
We've done about 24,000 additional scholarships. We're going to hopefully do another 18,000 this year, and we have what's called the Washington Promise. So it'll actually be a promise for people who earn about $60,000 or less. You'll get a free college education.
Oh, wow.
Basically, like almost everything. So it's a really, really rich program because we want everybody who needs it to be able to finance that college education. So it's a really big step forward.
State schools, or could you use it like anywhere?
You can use it anywhere, and that's the other thing that our program's a little unique because a number of states are moving towards sort of a free college movement, but it's only in state institutions, and only about half of our students go to state institutions. So one of the, our program has 2 big benefits. One, you can go to any institution. 2, you don't have to stay in school permanently because a lot of people have to have intermittent, and you are allowed to have an intermittent college career. And number 3, it just is a lot richer as far as its benefits. So we're really excited about making it a real promise.
Because we definitely tried something like that up here, and I guess one of the things was like, oh, what about people that use it at like religious schools? That was one of the big pieces. So I wonder how that was working.
It has not been an issue.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it has not. And it's interesting. I can't say why, but no one has really criticized that issue. Maybe because our religious colleges believe in science too, which is awesome.
Oh, no.
These are colleges in our state, which is great. It's comforting. So yeah, this plus our early child education advances we're going to do this year on the front end and the back end I'm very excited about what we're going to be able to do this year. In fact, I just met one of your colleagues who's a budding early education student or teacher.
There we go.
So I wanted to come out to Washington.
Yeah, it's great that you're really working on education because especially in northern New England, it's a big issue when it comes to education, at least in Maine where I'm from. A lot of schools, unfortunately, lack a lot of funding and stuff, and recently there's been a lot of teacher cuts because of the funding and things such as that, and teachers are making very low wages, so it's great that you've been really working on education overall?
Well, I believe it. It's how I got into politics, was passing the school bond. My family are a bunch of teachers, and we've had the biggest increase in funding in our state's history, I think.
Really?
At least adjusted for everything. We put about somewhere between $5 and $6 billion into our system. We had the biggest, really big compensation increase for our educators this year, and it is educators, not just teachers, but everybody in the system. And that's really important because we want people to stay in the classroom. It's great to work for Amazon and Microsoft, but we want to keep you working in the classroom, and to do that, you have to have competitive salaries. So we had a significant boost in teacher compensation. As a result, we're going to keep and attract educators, which I'm excited about. But now we want to work on the other end. That was a K through 12 system, but now we want to work on the early child system. We're actually starting a birth to 3 program and a home visiting program too. So every kid gets a home visit when they go home. You know, it's an adventure when you bring a baby home. And then we talked about this financial aid program. So yeah, I'm a believer. I hope Maine can do better.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, guys. Nice meeting you. Really appreciate this.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited about your future. Thanks for the intro. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we just get the two of us get a picture here, if we haven't already? Jamal, can we get a picture here?
Mind taking one for me?
Jordan, and then we have 2 more students from our green team.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's great.
You mind taking one for me too?
You got it.
Got it.
I think I got it. Check it out.
How'd you look? You look good? Oh yeah, we look like it's a dream team, all right.
All right. Where'd they go?
Oh, that's great, yeah.
So Mitchell and Emily
Yeah.
are here.
Mitchell?
Part of our green team.
Yeah.
And Mitchell's environmental science major.
What is the green team?
It's the environmental club on
basically.
campus.
Oh, right. Oh, great. Well, thanks for your leadership.
I do my best.
That's great.
Thank you.
You're going to be busy this year. You know, we got to override this veto of this energy bill that the governor vetoed last year, and I understand we got a good chance of doing that.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys are active.
I was interning with Molly Kelly, the Democratic governor.
Yeah.
Wish she won, honestly.
I love Molly. She's just wonderful. She was at my Christmas party in December, and her son lives in Washington State.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So I'm a really huge admirer of her, and I wish we could have helped her in significant ways. But there may come a day for her again.
I hope so too. I hope so too. 100%.
Yeah. So I think she's just a tremendous person. She really is. So what are you studying? What's your...
I'm actually English marketing major, yes.
English marketing.
Yeah, double major.
Double major. Okay, you're not marketing English language.
No.
It sells itself, right?
That's the idea. But yeah, so
that's
hopefully,
great.
be able to market and change better.
Well, listen, this is a very important part of this movement, is figuring that out.
How to advocate
What's the way to
for it.
talk about it? What's the way to communicate complicated scientific principles? So your skill set could be very, very important.
Sure.
So when you get insights, give me a call.
Thank you.
You guys asked some very insightful questions here. So you got a good group. So obviously you're doing something right.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to start a New Hampshire conservation voters group here. I was at a kickoff last night. Paul Hodes is a former member of the Congress I served with. You might be interested in hooking up with him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Paul Hodes. So tell him I sent you. We did the event last night trying to get it going. These organizations statewide are hugely effective. In my 100%. State, we got the Washington Conservation Voters. The League of Conservation Voters does great work nationally. So tell him I sent you.
Yeah, it starts at the same level.
Good luck. Thanks for helping Molly too. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you.
Governor,
Good talk.
quick
Yeah.
photo with you. We're gonna get a quick photo with you too, and then you're gonna
Okay. Well, let's get a picture here.
Which camera am I looking at here? You just want big one? Got it.
Perfect, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Good luck. I look forward to your careers. When you get a good insight, call me. Yeah, Sam's going to do an interview here?
Yeah.
Great. So you with, is this the school?
Yeah, this is the Institute's Instagram.
Oh, great.
And I'm Lexi.
Lexi?
I work here at the Institute. I do our communications.
Well, good work.
Yes.
You do a good job. Look at all these people you're communicating with.
So he's just going to have like 4 or 5 questions for you. They're fun, kind of quick
Great.
and easy questions.
Great. I'll try to keep it
And I'll
short.
be recording.
Yeah.
All right.
So our first question is, Okay, so our first question is, when you were growing up, what was your dream job?
Well, probably, playing for the Boston Celtics probably was my dream job early in life. I didn't think a lot beyond that. I actually wanted to be a doctor at one point, but I felt like my skills were better suited to being a lawyer, so I ended up being a lawyer, and here I am.
All right, and our second question is, for climate change, what is the first step that you would take?
Well, the introduction of a very comprehensive bill that would be comprehensive of the nature and the scale and the scope of this economic promise. It would be focused not only on reduction of carbon pollution, but also on creation of millions of jobs across the country. And I believe both are necessary, and we're capable of doing both.
I think you have the right idea. And what is one piece of advice you would have for young people today?
Vote for someone who believes in climate change and defeating climate change. I really, first, thank you for asking, but the first thing I would say is find something you're passionate about and just get into it, carve a place for you, be the best at it, and then think about public life in some capacity, and that'll suit you really, really well. Doesn't matter what it is, opera, physics, whatever it is, go for it.
Perfect. And the final question, what do you think will be the biggest discussed issue of the election of 2020?
Well, it ought to be climate change, because it is the thing that is central without solving this problem, we can't solve our other problems. And it is the thing that is most challenging. It has to focus our energies in the most unified way. So I'm convinced it should be, and I'm dedicated to that proposition.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank
today.
you.
I really appreciate it.
Good luck. I look forward to your career.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The press
Hopefully that was short enough.
It was. It was very good.
Hey, Governor, you remember Paul from last time? So we'll
Paul,
take
how you doing, man?
Good to see you back here.
I met with the breakfast. Yeah. Okay, guys. How you doing? Jay?
How's it going? Rob.
Rob, good to see you. Good to see you.
You're fine, right?
You guys ready?
Yep.
Well, Governor, you were asked this by one of the college students just now. Yeah, so let's go a little deeper into your timetable. You've got a lot of people now jumping into the race. Do you feel like if you don't act soon, you're going to be left behind?
No, actually, we've been very successful promoting this idea of climate change first, and we've actually had some success without being a declared candidate, so we're moving forward with that message. I am seriously considering this. If I do announce, it's going to be weeks, not months. And I'm excited about the reception we're getting on this message of economic growth through climate change. It resonated in Nevada last weekend. I have a sense, I've been in New Hampshire here for a few hours, but it's resonating here because it is one based on job creation and optimism. And I believe that character message can work in a presidential race, and I'm intent to make sure we have a candidate who sees it that way.
Governor, what's your take on the current opioid epidemic throughout the nation right now?
It challenges every community, urban and rural, upper and lower income levels. We, I think, have had in my state as good or better opioid response because it has been based on prevention. It has been based on a really sophisticated way of training physicians on how to deal on this. We've had one of the most successful ways to prevent the overprescription of opioids by limiting the amount of prescriptions that doctors can give, because we know that that pathway has been a pathway to doom for people through the legal usage of opioids. And we've also been very successful in the implementation of healthcare reform. So we have 800,000 people now covered. We're having good success on costs, and we've treated about 30,000 people with chemical addiction problems, and we have succeeded on that on a bipartisan basis. So for all those reasons, this continues to be a huge scourge, but we are fighting it with everything we got in the state of Washington.
You had a chance this morning to meet with Ray Buckley, the chairman of the New Hampshire Party, Democratic Party. Did you guys have a chance to bury the hatchet over the Molly Kelly lack of DGA funding?
Well, I'm not sure it's a hatchet that would need to be buried, but I had a really good discussion with Ray, and we talked about the frustrations of having limited budgets nationally, which we had a limited budget and had to make some really hard decisions. And it was particularly hard, and I told Ray this, because I frankly love Molly Kelly. I just adore her. I adore her leadership. So this was a tough decision, but we made some tough decisions. We flipped 7 seats, a record for the DGA, And we had a good discussion, and I believe we're going to move forward in a productive way and get a good Democrat chosen by New Hampshire.
And Governor Ray is on the record saying he was surprised you concluded to run because you didn't spend much time, spending money for Molly Kelly. I mean, what do you think about that notion that you should have been putting more money into the state and Democratic race in order to consider 2020 options?
Well, I understand the frustration, but I think when people think about this, they might think about the fact that when I was involved in the DJ leadership, we made decisions based on the good of the country and the good on electing Democratic governors across the country. And those decisions were quite successful because we had the biggest haul of Democratic governors in 36 years. They were hard decisions. There were other states where we also did not have enough money to compete: Arizona, Maryland, South Carolina. But we made decisions based on what was important to the country, not important to my potential presidential ambitions. And I think that's the way it should be. I think leaders have to lead and make tough decisions. And there were some tough decisions made. And I'm looking forward to moving forward in New Hampshire with the great success that we did have with multiple candidates. So I'm optimistic about it.
You're very passionate about climate change, and that shows. But do you think that's a winning issue for candidates? I mean, Tom Steyer spent money hand over fist in 2016 to make it a top-tier issue, and I'm not sure it registered really well with voters in the end. I mean, why do you think you or a different candidate could do differently?
I think the times are different than 10 years ago. I think that people are now experiencing climate change firsthand in their personal lives. They're seeing the fires on their TV screen. They're feeling the water around their ankles in hurricanes. This is a first-tier issue in people's personal lives. This is no longer just a graph on a chart. Fundamentally, that has changed in people's consciousness, number one. Number two, we have a record of job creation now that is outstanding, that can show people that we can grow our economy by defeating this monster. And number three, we may have some leaders that will stand up and make this an issue. We elected 10 new legislators in my state who were climate warriors. We elected governors. All of our governors were people who want to stand up against climate change, and we flipped 7 seats. This is the biggest Democratic victory in 36 years because we made it an issue. So I think the country is ready for it because the American character is inherently a can-do character. It's an optimistic viewpoint that we can solve these problems if we step up and fight them. And I believe that character issue can win a presidential race. And we'll be happy to test it if I become a candidate.
Governor, as you travel around and do these kinds of events with voters and talk to donors, are you looking for reactions and commitments that will convince you to get in the race? Or are you looking for reasons not to run at this point?
Well, I came here because I do become inspired by young people who are willing to fight climate change. And it is good to be inspired. And it's good to let them know what they're capable of as well. But I am listening to people about this, and I have to tell you that I'm increasingly convinced that an economic growth message that is built around beating climate change is a winning message for the Democratic Party. And the reason is in Nevada, we're seeing job creation by the thousands in the solar industry. I talked to Harry Reid about this when I was there. He recognizes this potential. Here you heard, I think, some enthusiasm from the young people in this regard. And this is a unifying issue because we can talk about job creation in any Midwest state as well as we can do in California or New Hampshire. You can build a clean energy economy in every state of this union. And for that reason, it is a winning message, in my view, in any state in the union. And I'll just tell you, a can-do attitude best beats a we can't do it because we're not smart enough or tough enough attitude every time. And the effort to defeat Donald Trump is an effort to defeat a fearful man who is a pessimist, who doesn't believe we're smart enough to beat climate change. He is wrong about the basic character of the American people. And he is wrong about the science of climate change. And that's going to be proven in the next election cycle, if I have anything to do about it. We have to have an optimist in the White House, and we're going to get one, I believe.
So when will we see you making that argument as an official candidate?
Well, I kind of did today, but I'm not a candidate.
Governor, you've got a lot going on back home, too, with the legislature taking up some of the issues that you even talked about here today. What would you say to the voters and the people in Washington State who might wonder, how are you going to juggle these national aspirations with doing the job that you're getting paid to do in Washington State right now?
Successfully, because we're doing that. I think that if you see how active we've been in just the last few weeks, we've had a major ORCA initiative. I rolled out my climate change plans. We have a very ambitious early education effort. We had our healthcare public option issue that we rolled out. We've been very active in our state. We need to be. We had a great meeting with Governor Brown, who with legislators just a couple nights ago, that helps advance that agenda, and I'll be there, I believe, tomorrow, with legislators on this effort. So I feel confident in my ability to do this. We've kind of been at this now for a couple months, and we're rocking and rolling in Washington State. We're going to have a lot of good stories out of this legislative session. I'm really bullish what we're going to do this legislative session.
You said you're not taking fossil fuel money. Have you thought about or considered doing any sort of carbon offset program if you're going to be traveling a lot more, flying across the country?
I haven't. I might do that. I haven't. What I have done, though, is, which I think is more important, is to help inspire a research project to allow us to fly jet airplanes on biofuels that don't have carbon dioxide emissions. And we're moving forward on that at Washington State University and Alaska Airlines and Boeing. We're now flying airplanes on biofuels, and I'm very keen on that research. There's actually a company in Washington State now even looking at an electric airplane. Maybe that's a ways off, but I think that's probably the most important thing I can do right now. We are walking our talk in Washington, where we talked about how we have some of the greatest usage of electric cars of any state government. We're buying electric buses like crazy. The capital electric buses in America is Wenatchee, Washington. We're building electric ferries. The state is leading on this, and rightfully so.
All right, we have time for one more question, and then we have to get going. So.
Who's got an easy question here?
Do you worry the focus on climate change could peg you as a single issue candidate if you were to run, and maybe in a way that would make you a novelty to voters?
No, because climate change is the issue in all of our issues. Climate change is a healthcare issue. It is an economic development issue. It is a national security issue. It's an educational issue about the importance of climate change education. So it touches everything, number one. Number two, our record of success in Washington, I think, is unparalleled. We've got the best economy in the United States. It has been named the best place to do business by Business Insider. It's been named the best place to work by Oxfam. And the reason is because, or one of the reasons, is because of our success on policy. Best paid family leave, one of the best minimum wages, best voter rights, first net neutrality, giant transportation infrastructure, huge investments in financing college education. We have such a huge record of success on multiple platforms that I think people will figure that out. And if I run, we'll do really well.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Governor, let me take
Good luck. Stay warm.
Let me take that microphone back from you. Travel. Where you are, they'll see.
Hi everyone, my name's Mike. I'm the creator of Mox News. And for the last 15 years, I have been telling you that as long as I have the support of the community that I serve, Mox News will post videos forever. And that's the truth. As long as I have your support, no one could ever make me stop. Unfortunately, currently, less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% of Mox News viewers ever donate, tip, or contribute anything back. Again, let me make that really clear. Much less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% ever give anything back. And to those of you who have donated to Mox News, I want to thank you so much, because it's because of your generosity that we have been able to bring attention to important videos that millions and millions of eyes would have never seen. And I think that that's an amazing thing that we've been able to make happen together. And I can't thank you enough for helping me make that happen. So it's not too late. If you'd like to see Mox News covering the 2020 presidential election, if you can't imagine the 2020 presidential election without Mox News, please, there's still time. You can make a difference. It's easy to make a contribution, donation, or tip. You can go to moxnews.com, or in the text body of this video, there are clickable links to the Patreon page or to the PayPal page. And again, it should take less than 2 minutes to make a donation, and your donation can make a big difference. So I thank you all. Stay cool. One of these days this war is going to end, and it would be awesome if Mox News could be there to celebrate that day with you.